This changes everything. Meri Brown's heart was beating in her chest like a drumline. The courtroom had become a theater of whispered judgment. Every individual a spectator in a play she hadn't realized would reach such a fever pitch. Whispers flared like small sparks, flickering across the room and meeting in a maelstrom of conjecture. Each eye in the room appeared to look straight into her very soul. As if each secret, every undergrounded conversation, and every muted feeling she had held for so many years was finally exposed under the chilly fluorescent lights overhead. Meri felt the heaviness of the moment bearing down upon her like a storm cloud, oppressive and crushing. Today was not just another court fight. Today was the day that all of the carefully concealed truths, all of the hidden betrayals, and all of the lies that had woven their way through her family's life would finally come to light. The stakes were ginormous, and Meri could feel them coursing through every nerve in her body. Even the air was thick around her, weighing down on her like the walls were co-conspirators determined to build the tension. Throughout the courtroom, Kody Brown sat in his normal place, the epitome of calm, or at least the iteration of calm that he always attempted to maintain. But Meri could find the cracks. The smug, almost condescending grin he usually had was replaced with something much more fragile. A flash of doubt that revealed the reality that even he knew this was not an ordinary day. His eyes darted nervously toward the judge, then back to Meri, as though trying to measure the storm he was about to face. Mary's hands trembled slightly, her fingers curling around the edges of the wooden table, as if it were a lifeline. The polished surface was cold under her palms, but the chill did nothing to calm her racing heart. At the back of her mind was also the remembrance of the many nights she had spent pining for this day. The nights when she had wondered if the truth would ever be loud enough to speak over decades of manipulation and deceit. She had rehearsed, practiced, and toughened herself for this moment. But no amount of preparation could have fully readied her for the buzz in the room, the gravity of expectation, and the sense tension that crackled like an electric wire in the air. The gavel of the judge came down with authoritative force, a loud crack that resonated like a gunshot in the courtroom. "Order in the court," the judge shouted, his voice firm and unshakable. All whispers stopped at once, and instead was filled with an electric tension that vibrated just beneath the surface of the room. Meri breathed slowly out, her chest constricted, but the physical relief did nothing to calm the tempest battering around inside her. Sweat dotted her forehead, a quiet reminder of the stress that clung to her. Her hands were slippery and damp as she grasped the tabletop, knuckles white, as if grasping it could anchor her mind amidst the chaos. She was acutely aware of every set of eyes upon her, every heart beating in sync with hers in a collective rhythm of suspense and expectation. It was nearly intolerable, but she knew she couldn't fail now. Not when the truth was just hers for the taking. In the middle of the judge's desk there was an envelope, plain but full of latent energy. It was not just a group of papers. It was a time bomb. A container holding proof so volatile that it could bring down everything Kody had constructed. Meri's gaze lingered on it, imagining the moment the contents would be revealed. The possibilities swirled in her mind like a hurricane. Shock, denial, anger, disbelief. She knew the impact would be immediate, irreversible, and utterly transformative. Meri's mind raced through the strategies she had meticulously crafted over the past months. She had weighed every option, predicted every countermove, and anticipated the reactions of everyone present in the courtroom. Nevertheless, no matter how much preparation she had done, the shock of being there was 1,000 times more gut-wrenching than anything she had anticipated. It was easy to practice lines and scenarios in secret. It was something else again to be here in the fierce illumination of the law and the unyielding judgment of her family and passers-by, aware that what she said next could turn everything around. Kody shifted his position in the chair, and Meri saw the way his hands were clenched together, knuckles white. He was fighting to keep his composure, to present strength, but the rigidity in his stance undermined his inner hysteria. Meri experienced a flash of satisfaction, but squashed it fast. This was not about ego. It was about justice, about revealing the truth for the benefit of all concerned. The room waited in silence. Even the building's familiar creaks, the quiet purr of the air conditioning, the muffled footsteps down the hallway, dissolved into nothing. It was as if the courtroom were a frozen time, suspended in expectation of the shouting surprise to come. Each subtle look, every change in stance, and each barely perceptible intake of breath added to the charged atmosphere that surrounded Meri as a tangible power. And then, all but imperceptibly, Meri experienced a stillness come over her, a quiet resolve that steadied her trembling hands. She recalled why she was here, not for revenge, not for glory, but for the truth. The envelope on the judge's desk wasn't just proof, it was an opportunity to take back control, to bring illumination to decades of lies, and to stand up for the family she loved in spite of it all. Meri drew a slow, deep breath, filling her lungs and calming her mind. She felt the beat of her pulse in her neck, the thud of her heartbeat vibrating with the intensity of the moment. She knew that when she finally spoke, each sentence had to radiate clarity, conviction, and courage. She had no time to hesitate, no room for mistake. Lastly, the judge's eyes locked onto hers, keen and anticipatory. Meri held herself erect, tilting her chin only slightly, with an air of stillness that belied the turmoil of fear within her. She was prepared. The era of anxiety was done. The hour for truth had come. The envelope, loaded with consequence, rested there like an unroused giant, awaiting her hand to stir it. All the eyes in the courtroom were fixed on her. Meri could sense the combined expectation, the coiled tension that would snap free. She knew that when the envelope was opened, she could never turn back. All the secrets, all the surreptitious transactions, all the well-guarded lies would be revealed, and the ramifications would echo far beyond this courtroom. Meri's lips pressed together in a firm line, a signal to herself to stay composed. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, imagined every possible reaction, and now it was real. The room was silent, the weight of expectation almost suffocating, but Meri was ready to step forward and let the truth speak for itself. The envelope was not just proof, it was a sign of bravery, fair play, and finally facing the truth. Meri Brown would turn everything around today, and there was no going back. The courtroom was thick with silence, a silence that did not reassure but smothered. Meri could practically hear the beating of her own heart resonating in her ears, its rhythm a reminder of what hung in the balance. She edged a fraction further back in her seat, attempting to look nonchalant, while her mind was disintegrating. Christine and Janelle sat back of her, faces ashen, eyes wide with fear and expectation. They weren't mere witnesses. Dearly, they were part of the story, part of the web of deceit that had brought them all to this moment. Next to them, Meri leaned forward, fingers interlocked and white-knuckled. She offered Meri a small nod, a silent expression of support, but Meri could detect the doubt registered behind her eyes. No one knew what was in the envelope on the judge's desk, not even her most trusted allies. That was the idea. Meri had kept this secreted away, hidden like a treasure, because she understood that if it leaked too early, Kody would manage to crush it. And yet here she stood, mere seconds from releasing it. Kody's attorney pushed his glasses up onto the bridge of his nose, and stood. His voice was piercing, bordering on sarcasm, as he spoke to the judge. "Your Honor," he started, his voice reeking with arrogance. "We've heard sufficient assertions from Mrs. Brown over the years. Assertions without proof. Assertions without basis. I request that we refrain from whiling away time and make her furnish something more than mere words." He paused, then turned to Meri, his eyes screwing into slits. "Mrs. Brown, are you absolutely sure about your allegations about the family finances?" The question hit like a thunderclap, and all eyes shifted to her once again. Meri's throat tightened. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders, threatening to crush her, but she didn't blink. Deliberately, slowly, she stood up. Her chair creaked across the wooden floor, the noise booming abnormally clear through the quiet courtroom. Her knees were weak, but she stood straight, making herself meet the lawyer's gaze. "Yes, Your Honor," she began, her voice shaking to start but firming with each sentence. "I am sure, and today I have evidence." Gasps spread through the courtroom, like waves, crashing one against the next. The gallery erupted in whispers. Christine put her hands over her mouth, eyes open wide in shock. Janelle hunched forward, as if she was trying to catch every syllable. Even Meri blinked in surprise, as if she couldn't believe Meri had just said it aloud. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. "Proof, you say?" Meri nodded. With deliberate precision, she leaned down and took out a small envelope from her purse. Her hands shook a little, as she held it up for all to see. The envelope was not flashy or sensational, simply plain paper, sealed at the top, but in that instant it seemed like dynamite. "This," Meri declared, her voice firm now, "is proof of financial impropriety. It has documents which indicate where the money has gone, accounts which were not disclosed, and decisions which were made without the family's knowledge." Kody's face jerked back, his eyes wide. The cocky grin he was attempting to sustain gave way to a look of panic, which spread over his face like a crack in glass. "That won't happen," he growled under his breath, but loud enough for everyone present to overhear. "She's bluffing." The lawyer stood up, visibly disturbed. "Your Honor, this is completely irregular. We have never seen these documents. There's no way of knowing if they're real. This is manufactured." The judge waved a hand toward Meri. "Mrs. Brown, come forward." Each step that Meri made towards the bench was like moving through flames. Her chest pounded, her legs weighed down, as if anchored by the burden of her choice. She put the envelope gently in the hand of the judge, her fingers holding for a split second, as letting it go meant relinquishing hold on her future. The judge looked at her for a moment, before opening the flap. The room tensed, as if the accumulated interest of dozens would hurry the process along. His fingers tightened on the edge of his table, his knuckles white, his breathing slow. Meri went back to her chair, her gut twisting. This was it, the moment she'd fantasized so many times in the cold, dark hours of the night. And now that she was experiencing it, it was almost intolerable. She clamped her fists on her thighs beneath the table, reminding herself to keep her cool. Christine leaned back and whispered to Janelle, "Do you think it's real?" Janelle shook her head. "I don't know, but if it is, everything changes." The judge drew out the pile of papers and started reading. His brows creased within a minute, line upon line. His face evolved from impassive to disturbed, then to pure shock. The room was silent, the waiting so taut it threatened to break. At last the judge raised his head, his eyes piercing. "Mrs. Brown," he said slowly, "these papers, if genuine, they are very serious." Meri gulped hard, forcing herself to look at him. "They're real, Your Honor. Every word, every number, every signature. I saw to it myself." Kody leapt to his feet, shouting, his voice cracking with desperation. "This is an outrage. She doesn't know what she's saying. Sit down, Mr. Brown," the judge commanded firmly. The outburst only served to confirm what Meri had already surmised. The truth was terrifying to him. For an instant Meri closed her eyes and allowed the burden of the moment to overwhelm her. She had done it. She had pierced the shell of Kody's tightly kept kingdom. The walls he had erected around his secrets were crumbling. And for the first time in years, Meri felt that she wasn't helpless. But she also realized that this was only the start. The papers were the initial strike. The actual fight, the responses, the denials, the destruction of lies remained to be seen. The judge put the papers on the desk, his face a mask. "This court will review these documents closely. They will be entered into evidence for the time being." And with that, the envelope was no longer just Meri's secret. It belonged to the court, to the world. The judge's hands moved deliberately, almost too slowly for Meri's pounding heart to bear. Each second stretched like an eternity, as he adjusted his glasses, scanning the first page of the documents she had handed over. His brow furrowed almost immediately. He leaned back in his chair, then leaned forward again, as if needing a closer look to believe what he was seeing. There was a hush in the courtroom, a silence so profound Meri heard the soft buzz of the air conditioner overhead, the groan of a bench, as someone resettled uncomfortably in the gallery. Everyone in the room, family, attorneys, strangers, waited for the judge's response. Meri sat still, hands folded in a knot, so tight her knuckles ached white. Inside, her gut knotted with fear. She had thrown everything away by coming forward with these papers. Would they listen to her? Would the documents be enough to destroy Kody's web of power? Or would they turn on her, cast her aside as a vindictive wife seeking revenge? Her own eyes flashed in Kody's direction. He sat tight, his jaw so hard she worried he might fracture his teeth. His hands clutched the table's edge as if he could stall the entire debacle from getting out of hand by hanging on tightly. But the facade was crumbling. Beads of sweat popped at his temples, and he continually glanced at the judge's face, as if hoping to find some glimpse of salvation. The judge at last cleared his throat. The noise boomed like thunder. These papers, he started slowly, imply a series of transactions, large amounts of money, transferred into accounts that are not listed in any of the family's financial statements. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Christine's hand flew to her mouth. Janelle leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, her body stiff with disbelief. Mary's face drained of color, her lips parting as though she were about to speak but couldn't find the words. The judge went on, scanning the pages, his face growing darker with every page. There are also mentions of property purchases, business ventures, and what looks like tampering with the family trust. The whispers restarted, hushed, desperate, humming like bees. Gallery members inclined toward each other, exchanging hypotheses and gasps of amazement. The noise escalated until it seemed like a hurricane, raging around Meri. Kody pounded a fist on the table, the crack echoing like a whip. "This is a lie," he snarled, his anger shaking with rage. "She's out to kill me. None of this is true." The judge held up a strict hand. "Mr. Brown, you will hold your tongue unless directly spoken to." But Kody wasn't done. He spun his chair around, his eyes blazing as he glared at Meri. "You're making a fool of yourself. You think you can win by slinging lies at me? You'll be sorry." The first smile Meri had given that day, it wasn't a smile of victory, but a smile of silent resistance. Kody's tantrum wasn't anger, it was terror. And terror meant the papers were effective. Her attorney, sitting next to her, stood quietly. "Your Honor, these documents have been authenticated by a forensic accountant. They are not in dispute. What is at issue is why Mr. Brown went out of his way to hide them from his family." The courtroom burst into stunned sounds again. Gasps, murmurs, the rustle of reporters writing furiously into notebooks. The gravity of the revelation could not be denied. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom." Silence again. Mary's heart rate slowed. Only a little. She could sense the tension in the room changing. For years Kody had dictated the story, taking things out of context, positioning himself as the victim whenever it was convenient to him. But now the tale was beyond his control. The truth sat on the page, in black and white, not to be ignored. Nevertheless, Meri knew that the fight was far from over. Papers could reveal lies, but they would not rid the world of years of manipulation overnight. Kody would strike back with everything he could muster. His charm, his fury, his capacity to turn people's emotions around on them. The war had just started. The judge turned to the last page of the packet and stopped. His face set in stone. Gradually he raised his eyes towards Kody. "Mr. Brown," he stated directly, "these documents contain not only budgetary information, but a signed contract as well. It has your name on it. Would you like to tell the court why you approved transferring funds into a secret account that was never revealed?" The words hit the courtroom like an earthquake. Gasps filled the air, louder this time, almost drowning out the creak of benches and the shuffle of papers. Christine's eyes widened in horror. Janelle shook her head in disbelief. Mary's eyes glistened, as though tears threatened to fall. Kody's face went white. He tried to speak, but nothing issued. For a man who always had an answer, who always had a spin on the story, his silence was incriminating. At last he stuttered. That's taken out of context. It's not what it appears." The judge's voice grew sharp. "Then explain.
Because from where I'm sitting, it appears to be willful suppression. The silence that ensued was thicker than any words could ever be.
Meri reclined in her chair, her chest heaving with calculated breaths. Relief and fear mixed in her bloodstream. She had done it. She had shattered the charade, uncovered the first unequivocal evidence of Kody's deceit. And yet she also understood this was only the start. The truth was out. Yes, but so was the war. The judge put the papers aside, his face impassive. This court will need more testimony and evidence. But for now, these documents will remain entered evidence against Mr. Brown. Meri closed her eyes for an instant. She still heard the whispers, the gasps, the shock that hovered in the air. But beneath it all, she sensed something new. Something that she hadn't sensed in years. Hope. For the first time she felt like perhaps possibly the truth might prevail. The atmosphere within the courtroom was heavy with tension, as though the walls themselves had soaked up the weight of secrets and betrayal. Meri felt it pushing against her chest, each gasp succeeding the last. The papers were now entered into evidence. But the fight wasn't finished. If anything, it was just starting. The judge's gavel had hardly ceased its reverberation when Kody leapt to his feet once more. His voice stern and frantic. "Your Honor, these allegations are founded on half-truths and deceptions." His voice broke with a combination of rage and terror. "She's distorting all this to portray me as a monster." The courtroom came alive again. Gasps, whispers, paper shuffling. Writers wrote madly, their pens scratching across their notebooks like claws. Every face in the room focused on Kody now. And Meri could spot the sweat beading at his temples, the telltale tremble in his hands. The judge's face darkened. "Mr. Brown, you will restrain yourself. The evidence will be examined objectively. But the courtroom is not for drama." But Kody wasn't hearing. He spun toward Meri, his face burning. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Dragging this out in front of everybody. You've always wanted to bring me down. And now you think you've got your opportunity." Meri met his glare with unwavering eyes. Her lips quivered, but she would not back down. This wasn't about being scared anymore. It was about holding her ground, even when every nerve in her body was screaming at her to flee. Her lawyer leaned in toward her, speaking softly. "Remain silent, let him unravel. The more he gets out of control, the stronger your case gets." Kody's attorney pulled at his sleeve, insisting he sit. "Let me do this," he whispered irately. But Kody withdrew, refusing to give up even an ounce of control. "Your Honor," the attorney started, his tone smoother now. "Although these papers look incriminating at first glance, context is everything. We contend that the transactions in question were valid, that they were made in the best interest of the family. We ask for time to examine the evidence and file a complete response." The judge nodded quickly. "You will have that chance. But in the meantime, the papers hold." A low murmur ran through the gallery once more, such as thunder growling in the distance. Meri's heart pounded, her mind racing. She wanted to believe the hard part was over, that the evidence alone was enough. But she knew better. Kody wasn't the kind of man to go down without a fight. His entire life had been built on control, on bending the truth to his advantage. Now that the truth was out, he would claw at every angle, every shadow to twist it back into his favor. Then, as Meri believed the silence couldn't be any tighter, the doors at the rear of the court creaked open. All eyes followed as a court officer strode down the aisle, a manila envelope held in his hand. The officer approached the judge, whispering something inaudible before placing the envelope on the bench. The judge's brows rose slightly as he broke the seal and pulled out a stack of printed pages. Meri's stomach lurched. She hadn't expected this. "What is that?" Kody demanded, his voice a mixture of panic and defiance. The judge's gaze swept across the top page, and his face turned serious. He peered over the rim of his glasses, his tone low but biting. "This court has just been provided supplemental evidence. Emails and correspondence pertaining to this case." Gasps exploded through the courtroom like fireworks. Christine leaned forward, gripping the bench in front of her. Janelle whispered, "What now?"
while Meri clasped her hands so tightly, her knuckles turned bone white. Mary's throat tightened. She hadn't brought those emails forward. She hadn't dared. They were too damning, too personal, too explosive. Yet here they were, in the hands of the court. The judge pushed his glasses up his nose. These emails seemed to clearly incriminate Mr. Brown in outright efforts to defraud the family trust. They outlined techniques for siphoning money, hiding accounts, and deceiving family members regarding the status of financial holdings. The ensuing silence was oppressive. Mary's hands trembled in her lap. She hadn't expected someone else to step in. Someone who had access to those private communications. A whistleblower perhaps, or maybe someone from inside Kody's own circle, had finally turned against him. The thought was both terrifying and relieving. Kody's face went a deep red that was almost purple. That's not possible. That's not real. Someone is setting me up. His voice quivered again, squeaky and frantic. You can't believe this. But the judge didn't listen to him. He riffled through the pages, his scowl growing tighter with each line. Eventually he laid them down with careful weight. Mr. Brown, these are serious allegations. Extremely serious. This court will not turn a blind eye to them. The air in the room was tense now, pulled so tight Meri feared it would break. She felt the pressure of each gaze, some sympathetic, some questioning, some loaded with shock. For a brief moment, she thought back to the years she had struggled to maintain peace, struggled to keep the family intact. In spite of Kody's domination, she had remained silent so long, hiding her own fears, stifling her own sense. And now she was here, seeing the truth spill out for the world to see. Terrifying perhaps, but it felt freeing. Her attorney leaned in close once more, his tone barely audible. This is a game changer. He can't spin his way out of this one. Not with evidence this compelling. Meri nodded weakly, but her heart still pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe the nightmare was over at last. But she knew Kody. He wouldn't quit. He couldn't quit. Sure enough, Kody stiffened abruptly, slapping both palms on the table. This is a trap. You're all ganged up against me. My own family. My wives. They've plotted to kill me. His voice increased in volume, with every word, the facade of mastery disintegrating. But I won't let you win. Do you hear me? I won't let you win. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. One more word like that, Mr. Brown, and you will be in contempt. Kody stood stock still, his chest pumping, his eyes wild. The silence that followed was more oppressive than before, heavy with shock, fear, and expectation. Meri remained very still, her expression serene even as her insides churned. She knew the war was far from over. The evidence was compelling. Yes, but Kody's anger was volatile. He would fight, claw, and strategize until his dying breath. And yet, for the first time in years, Meri saw the balance tipping. The truth was no longer in the shadows. It was out there, irrefutable. Irrefutable enough to shake the man who once was invincible. The suspense in the courtroom had finally broken its limits. And Meri knew the true tempest had just started. The courtroom was now a battlefield. The gallery's whispers were a steady buzz, like bees in a swarm, stinging with condemnation. The judge's gavel had hardly damped down Kody's final blow. But the harm had been done. His facade had slipped, and the world had glimpsed the fissures. Meri sat still, fingers locked in a grip so tight her knuckles throbbed. Her heart pounded inside her like a drum in battle. But her face remained impassive, unruffled. She knew the tempest was almost spent. One way or another, everything was going to be different. The judge's voice broke through the thick air. This court has considered the evidence submitted, the financial records, the follow-up emails, and the testimony provided. Mr. Brown, the allegations before you are serious. In the time before I make my decision, I will give both parties one last chance for closing arguments. The room suspended its breath. Kody's attorney stood first. His tie was perfect, his tone silky, but even he couldn't conceal the tension around his eyes. Your Honor, We are not in denial of such documents existing. But context, Your Honor. Families are complicated things. Financial choices seldom black and white. My client did not act out of spite, but out of a desire to shield his family during hard times. He is not a criminal. He is a man who has erred. Yes, but who has also sacrificed. We ask this court to look beyond the slogans and headlines and dismiss this bid to demonize him. It was well crafted. It was professional. But Meri could detect the emptiness in every sentence. So could the jury. She saw it in their eyes. The way they leaned back, unmoved, unconvinced. Then it was Meri's lawyer's turn. He rose slowly, deliberately holding the stack of evidence like a sword. His voice was calm but sharp, every word striking like a hammer. Your Honor, this is not a case about small mistakes or misunderstandings. This is about deception. For years, Mr. Brown used his position of authority to manipulate those who trusted him most. His own family. He concealed funds. He fibbed about accounts. He employed fear and charm to hold power while stealing from others the truth. These papers, these emails aren't misunderstandings. They are a pattern, a scheme. And now, finally, the truth is revealed. This isn't about dismantling a man. It is about holding him accountable. Each word echoed off the walls of the courtroom like a bell. Even Christine, Janelle, and Robin, who were seated in stiff rows behind Meri, appeared stunned by the gravity of the speech. The attorney spun, his eyes scanning the room before fixing on the judge. Your Honor, justice delayed is justice denied. It is time to bring the delay to a close. It is time to serve justice. Silence. A silence so profound that it appeared the whole world had come to a standstill, holding its very breath. The judge clasped his hands, his expression unreadable. He leaned back, his robe creaking with the movement, and allowed the silence to grow until it grew oppressive. Then gradually he spoke. This court finds.
The words hung suspended in the air, like a guillotine over the block. Kody's head jerked up, his eyes wild, scanning the judge's face for clemency. Meri caught her breath, her fingers curling over the table's edge. That the evidence proffered is considerable and believable. The financial records and email exchanges show a pattern of purposeful concealment and deception. Accordingly, this court decides. Bang! The courtroom doors boomed open so hard that the sound reverberated like thunder. Everyone turned around. A woman entered, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her eyes blazing with anger. She carried yet another folder in her hands. I have something the court must see, she bellowed. The bailiffs hurried towards her, but the judge held up his hand. Let her speak. Meri's jaw fell open. She knew the woman immediately. An old business partner of Kody's. A woman who had disappeared years ago after a financial scandal that never was cleared up. The woman's voice shook with feeling as she handed the folder over to the court officer. These are documents Kody hid even from his most trusted advisors. He believed I burned them up, but I didn't. He can no longer hide from this. The judge read the first page, his eyes pinching. Then he glared at Kody, his tone firm. Mr. Brown, do you have something to say about this? Kody's face blanched. He parted his lips but nothing emerged. His lips trembled, his chest labored. For the first time ever, the master manipulator had no script, no grip, no way out. The gallery exploded. Gasps, murmurs, shouts. Reporters jumped to their feet, cameras clicking like lightning. Christine's hand went to her mouth. Janelle whispered, "Oh my God," and Robin hid her face in her hands. Meri felt numb all over. She hadn't prepared for this. She had toughened herself up for the verdict, but not for another revelation to come crashing down like a sledgehammer in the 11th hour. Yet as shock turned to focus, she thought this was it. This was the finale. The judge's gavel came down for the second time. Order, order. The din subsided, but the tension only grew thicker. He stared Kody straight in the eye, his tone steel. Brown, in light of the overwhelming evidence brought forward, including these recently submitted documents, This court has no other option than to proceed with complete proceedings for fraud and financial malfeasance. You will be held accountable for these acts. And you will be held accountable. The last gavel blow resounded like a death knell. Kody fell back into his chair, his face pale, his body shaking. For once the man who had dominated his family with steel confidence seemed small, trapped, shattered, undone. The courtroom murmured in shock. The headlines were already being penned. Kody Brown exposed. Justice at last. Meri remained frozen, her chest expanding and contracting with slow, measured breaths. Relief swept over her. But so did something else. A profound, silent grief for all the years wasted, for all the agony borne. She had fought so hard for this moment, but it didn't taste sweet. It tasted heavy, required, unavoidable. Her attorney rested a gentle hand on her arm. It's over. Meri shook her head weakly, never taking her eyes from Kody. No, she whispered. It's just starting out. For Meri knew that this wasn't over. Kody had power, allies, and the deadly pride of a man who could not stand to be defeated. The courtroom had landed its punch, but the struggle for freedom, for healing, for truth, it was just beginning. The judge stood, discharging the court. The room burst into commotion. Reporters scrambling for interviews, spectators abuzz with shock. Christine and Janelle moved quickly towards Meri, their faces spangled with a combination of fear and pride. Kody, on the other hand, was ringed by his attorneys, head bowed, shoulders slumped. For the first time in years, the man who once appeared unstoppable looked like any other defendant, ensnared by the coils of his own deceptions. Meri rose slowly, her legs trembling but her will unshaken. She faced her sisters, her voice low but resolute. We've only just begun to write the true story, she declared. And this time we tell it our way. The three women made eye contact, an unspoken agreement between them. Whatever was to come next, they would stand together. As Meri emerged from the courtroom, cameras popping like stars all around her, she felt the world tilt. For once the power lay not in Kody's grasp. It was hers. And this time she wasn't letting go.